Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a strategic briefing that decodes literally one of the most intense and consequential institutional standoffs in modern history. We are talking about Operation Constellation Seizure. We're going to systematically unravel this rapid succession of events, starting from the massive legal earthquake of the April 2026 Hensley Supreme Court ruling, all the way to the terrifying ground-shaking standoff at the Sandia National Laboratories. If you really want to understand the current friction over national sovereign defense, this is exactly where all the pieces finally come together.
We've got a lot of ground to cover, so here's our agenda. 1. The dead cat mask. 2. The Hensley legal earthquake. 3. 2.9 THC kinetic physics. 4. The Sandia mountain breach. 5. Phononic cascades and grid failures. And finally, 6. The 2027 civilization reset. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The dead cat mask.
So you might remember the absolutely crazy news cycle on May 5, 2026. At exactly 4 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, breaking news hit everywhere, claiming a massive military mutiny was underway. The story was that the president had been denied nuclear authentication codes for an offensive strike on Iran. Well, according to the source dossiers we're looking at, that entire public narrative was a total fabrication. It was a dead cat media strategy, deployed with surgical precision at the exact moment a localized electromagnetic pulse caused a massive grid collapse in Albuquerque. That fake nuclear crisis? It was just noise. It was specifically designed to drown out the very real signal of a covert federal civil war happening right inside the Sandia Vault.
Section 2. The Hensley legal earthquake.
To understand why military factions are suddenly pointing guns at each other, we have to look at the legal trigger. On April 22, 2026, the Supreme Court dropped a 6-3 ruling in Hensley v. Corp. The key quote here is absolutely crucial. Private military contractors cannot claim federal battlefield immunity for conduct not specifically authorized by the government. Overnight, this ruling effectively ended a 70-year monopoly. It stripped private defense contractors of their blanket legal immunity. Meaning, if an aerospace company was holding non-human intelligence hardware without a specific, line-item federal contract, they were suddenly legally defenseless.
Think about the massive shift in power here. Pre-Hensley, corporate gatekeepers just hid this exotic technology behind Title 50 intelligence shields. They were practically untouchable. Post-Hensley, holding these uncontracted assets suddenly became a state law tort known as conversion of property. Basically, they were legally viewed as stealing from the American public, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth used this ruling as a massive legal battering ram. He used it to force a shift from private custody to federal sovereign oversight, threatening crippling lawsuits to essentially mandate the nationalization of this technology.
Section 3. 2.9 THZ kinetic physics.
Okay, so what exactly is the military trying to seize? It comes down to a specific frequency, 2.9 terahertz. This is the core indicator of non-human hardware, but surprisingly, it's also linked directly to human material science. 2.9 THz is the harmonic zero point for Mondaloy. That's a metric-engineered, nickel-based superalloy patented by a JPL scientist named Monica Jacinto-Reza, who, by the way, mysteriously vanished in 2024. The point is, the defensive capabilities of this tech aren't magic. They are rooted in highly advanced, metric-engineered phonic physics.
Let me give you a real-world example of what this looks like in action. During a 2024 engagement, a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone fired a Hellfire missile directly at an anomalous craft we now call the Yemen Orb. Multispectral sensors recorded the orb immediately emitting a massive 2.9 terahertz phonic resonance. This resonance acted as a phonokinetic buffer. The Hellfire missile effectively just bounced off the craft. Zero structural damage was recorded. None. It's wild.
If that sounds complicated, just think of the 2.9 THz frequency like a pair of high-end noise-canceling headphones. But instead of canceling out sound waves, Mondale vibrating at 2.9 THz completely neutralizes incoming physical impact and kinetic energy. It's a perfect kinetic buffer. This beautifully explains why the military is so desperate to seize this exact physical mechanic. They want to use it to engineer an impenetrable, planetary-scale defense shield for humanity.
Section 4. The Sandia Mountain Breach.
But before they can build that shield, they have to physically get their hands on the hardware. Let's trace the timeline. In February 2026, Major General Neil McCasland, who was essentially the biometric human key to these vaults, was extracted in what looks like a non-voluntary operation. Then came the April Hensley ruling, which threw the corporate gatekeepers into a total panic. Fearing seizure, they moved the Yemen Orb out of private facilities and hid it deep inside the Department of Energy's Yemen Vault at Sandia National Laboratories. By May, military forces arrived to take it back, leading to an unprecedented standoff.
Here is how the Department of Energy actually blocked the Department of War. Step 1. The DOE invoked the Atomic Energy Act, instantly cloaking the newly moved orb under the classification of restricted data. Step 2. Colonel David Ashford cited a classified 1954 precedent known as the Sovereign Bypass, declaring the vault completely sovereign territory. And Step 3. Armed federal agents literally blocked military inspectors from entering. The asset was made completely off-limits, even to the President of the United States.
Section 5. Phononic cascades in grid failures.
As the standoff intensified, Colonel Ashford gave a strict order. Absolutely no one could enter that facility until the mountain achieved exactly 100% harmonic lock.
So what happens at 100% resonance? Well, it physically grounds the Yemen Orb to the mountain. As the 2.9 terahertz signature stabilized, it shifted into a sustained standing wave, hitting the Albuquerque grid with a 4.2 megawatt surge. The entire Manzano Mountain synchronized with the craft, creating a 1.8 Hz microtremor. To put that into perspective, that's a vibration capable of literally liquefying concrete. This phonic cascade triggered those massive, pulse-like blackouts across the city. More importantly, it successfully anchored the asset to the granite mass of the mountain, making it physically impossible for the corporate gatekeepers to secretly move the hardware again.
Section 6. The 2027 Civilization Reset.
Now we get to the existential threat hanging over all of this. If we trace the history back to the 1940s, we find the Sentinel Protocol. This was a grand bargain struck between human authorities and non-human intelligence known as the caretakers. Here's the terrifying part. The caretakers view Earth as a managed biological nursery, and their advanced technology is strictly on lease to us. And that lease has a hard-coded expiration date, the 2027 periodic sync, which is the deadline for the caretakers to return.
So, we have two completely opposed strategies colliding right now. On one side, the corporate gatekeepers want to honor the Sentinel Protocol. Their goal is to offshore the tech back through an L-zone wormhole and basically just survive the 2027 deadline in their private deep mountain survival bunkers. On the other side, the Department of War wants to completely breach the protocol. They want to nationalize the Mondaloy hardware and use it to engineer a planetary defense shield, publicly declaring humanity a sovereign species.
And this is the ultimate institutional risk of the military's physical raid. You see, to the caretakers, that continuous 2.9 terahertz frequency acts as a cosmic safe word, signaling that their leased asset is secure. The caretakers operate on strict resource efficiency. If Secretary Hegseth's military raid accidentally cuts that 2.9 terahertz signal, it instantly notifies them of a breach. Realizing humans have violently seized their tools violates the 1940s lease, and it threatens to provoke a full civilization reformat, meaning our accelerated timeline could force the caretakers to, quote, burn the garden early.
So, as we wrap up this strategic briefing, you have to ask yourself an almost impossible question. Will silencing the 2.9 terahertz frequency successfully establish humanity as a sovereign species? Or will it prematurely trigger the caretakers to completely reformat our civilization before the 2027 deadline? The 2026 Sandia breach forced all of this out of the shadows, but as that 2027 clock ticks down, we're all left wondering what the true cost of national sovereign defense actually is. Thanks for diving into this explainer with me. Keep asking the hard questions and keep following the data.